This last weekend was such a monumental and major weekend within sports. From the Masters to UFC 300 to now, the NBA playoffs are here. It's just been loaded, and we have been spoiled, and we've been treated as sports fans to have this almost it seems like every single weekend now, and this weekend did not fail. We're gonna talk about everything that happened this last weekend, because I was glued to my TV. It seemed like almost every second I was allowed to. But the NBA playoffs are here, and as we speak, the not the in season, the play-in tournament is officially underway. So we're going to break down those games also. But first, I am your host, Matthew Raridan, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. I'm hoping you guys had a great weekend, just like we did. Guys, is this weekend pretty memorable to you guys as far as everything that took place this weekend?
It was
I
just
would
one
say so.
thing after another all weekend long.
It's the gift that keeps on giving. In words of cousin Eddie from Christmas Vacation, it
For the record, Ed and Matthew are not cousins. Just wanted to clarify that.
no. Well, cousin
Now
Eddie.
we, not that we know of, at least.
Yeah, long lost cousins, but,
Yeah.
yeah, it was just a great weekend. Sports, it is that gift that keeps on giving that, we just keep getting weekend and weekdays that are just filled with sports, and I'm all for it. I know you guys are too. But first, I wanna introduce both of my co-hosts here today. We've got David Streep,
Hey, y'all.
and secondly, we've got Ed Smith.
Welcome, y'all.
Guys, let's jump kind of into this. We will talk more about this past weekend, but first I want to talk more on the current side of things, and that is the NBA playoffs. For the most part, the field is set except for the play-in tournaments right now that are happening as we speak. For those who are not yet informed, the games that are happening right now is the Lakers and Pelicans are playing. They are the 7 and 8 seed. And then we have the Kings and Warriors as well, the 9 and 10 seeds. So there's the West right there. In the East, we've got the 76ers and the Heat. Gosh, that's going to be a good game. And then we've got the Bulls and the Hawks for the 9 and 10 seed. So if you aren't familiar, we did say it last time, but the winner of the 7 and 8 seed game will automatically go on. The loser of that game will play the winner of the 9 and 10th seed. So, uh, the loser of that 9 and 10 seed is automatically eliminated. Their season's done. But it is something the NBA had implemented here recently. But I just want to ask you guys whether it is a play-in tournament game or a matchup that's already set in the playoffs. Is there one that you're looking forward to the most? Ed, I'll start with you.
I'm really looking forward to Lakers and Warriors because I do expect the Warriors to get past the Kings. Sorry to tell you, Matthew, that's kind of how that is. Um, but when you're talking about the battle of the old guard, if you will, the Warriors and Lakers are it. And it's almost, you know, something that you want to see happen, one get through the other before you get to the rest of the Western Conference, which is really a lot younger across the board than what those two teams are as a whole. So I'm interested to see that and see how they really get after each other because through the season, there have been some major blowouts in those games. So it's just how well can were they just kind of playing at that point, or were they really going after it, uh, knowing that uh, they would wind up in this position at some point because they have been playing in the playoffs for I don't know how many years straight. So it's I'm interested to see how they wind up in this play-in format going into the bigger bracket.
Well, I hate to break it to you, Ed, but it actually may not happen because this was before the show. Before last I checked, the Lakers were up by 13 on the Pelicans. So if the Lakers win that game, they are going to be going straight to the Nuggets. So unless there's a collision course like there was last year, which there ended up being, the Warriors and Lakers did play each other later in the playoffs. Lakers did get the better of that. But who knows? The Pelicans can still catch up, and Lakers lose and Warriors win. Then they'll play each other. Or the Lakers and the Warriors happen to go through the whole playoffs and winning their series until they play each other.
There's some strategy that could take place here that we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Absolutely, we will. But David, I have a strange suspicion it is a team down in Florida you may be interested in, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Is there a matchup you're interested in seeing in the playoffs?
Well, there's actually a couple of matchups, Matthew, and funny enough, it actually involves two teams in Florida, or the only two teams in Florida. With the Magic, with me being a Magic fan, we're that up and coming team. A lot of young stars on our team with guys like Suggs, Paolo, Franz Wagner. Offense hasn't been great; it's left a lot to be desired all year. But defense has been nasty all year, and I really feel like we have a good shot against against the Cavs. But I'm also really looking forward to the Heat and Sixers matchup because on one hand, you got a Sixers team that's entering the playoffs as arguably the hottest team in the NBA. But you also have a Miami Heat team who really has proven that they just kind of flip a switch when they get to the playoffs. They've proven that they may not perform the best during the regular season, but when the playoffs hit, it's probably not smart to bet against Miami. So
Yeah, especially after last year, all that they did, especially it all started in the play-in tournament last year for
yeah.
Miami. So they could have that same magic once again.
So yeah, I mean, if there's any fan of a team that's in a play-in tournament, and you're thinking, well, play-in tournament, we're not going to make it far. You never know. I mean, yes, Miami did get killed by Denver in the finals, but they still made it to the finals.
Yeah. All right. Come on, Kings. You hear that? We got some hope, baby. But there's actually a matchup that is just really fascinating to me. I look at the playoff bracket and my eyes automatically gravitate towards it, and that's the Timberwolves and the Suns. The Suns finished the season strong to end up working their way out of the play-in tournament, which we talked about last episode, to now being just officially in the playoffs, but they're matched up against the Timberwolves. And this is what's crazy is that going towards the last game of the season, it was a three-way tie for the one seed. You had OKC, you had the Nuggets, and you had Minnesota Timberwolves all atop of the Western Conference. And it ended up working out to where the Timberwolves became the 3 seed and they are facing off against the Suns. But I'll tell you what, that Timberwolves team is loaded. Just watching them, if they could stay healthy, when you see Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, and then of course we all know about Anthony Edwards. That team it can be pretty star-studded if healthy. We know what Karl Anthony Towns can do, not only under the hoop, but he is a perimeter shooter who could shoot the three ball well. I mean, he won a 3-point contest. All right, he is a legit shooter. Rudy Gobert is not, but he is a great defender. Hence why he wins several. He has won several Defensive Player of the Year awards. But then Anthony Edwards, this guy is a freak out on the court who has really just emerged himself as probably the next up and coming star in the NBA. I mean, I say that, but he was drafted number 1 overall, so there's a reason why he's just showing his potential now. But then the Suns, they still have Kevin Durant. They still have I mean, they got Eric Gordon there. They've got Devin Booker. They've got a list of people there. Grayson Allen, who is leading the league in 3-point percentage. They have a loaded team too. And we talked about this a couple episodes ago about these super teams. And I look at the Western Conference and I'm like, oh my gosh, you got the Clippers have always been a super team, seems like the last 10 years or so. Then you have the Suns, who they loaded up on that, and then the Lakers. But and it'll probably be the Nuggets that win again with their homegrown talent. But that Timberwolves and Suns team, to me, that matchup is going to be really fascinating there. But they're all fascinating because it's the playoffs. You all made it to the playoffs for a reason, and anything could happen.
One of the biggest things that I'm looking at for the Eastern Conference is, will Giannis stay healthy? We
I mean, I
talked about
think
it before.
he's supposed to be out for the first round, isn't he? Or at least part of
They're
the first
expected
round.
to play without him. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, if they get down, do you really think he's going to just continue to sit? Uh, because if you're looking at being down 3-0 in that first series, especially against a team that they know so well in the Pacers, then is there really a way that Giannis is not going to try and kind of push his way back in? And with that calf injury, that's one of those injuries that you have to let rest.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you could risk it being a worse situation if you injure it by coming back too early. So it all kind of plays together. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, if we see that 3-0, elimination time for the Bucks.
Yeah, that could be really big as far as will their star play? And then, of course, Doc Rivers is their coach, so that may also tell kind of foreshadow some things there. But we talk about a lot about analytics and how it's taken over sports. There's strategy behind it, so they say, but we've seen is load management a strategy, or is possibly losing some games along the way a strategy? Ed, I know you want to chime in a little bit on this.
Well, you were saying earlier about the Lakers. To me, I don't think they match up very well against the Nuggets. So, do they wind up just kind of tanking this game a little bit because they know they have the chance to have another play in game to then play the Thunder as the number one seed? That, to me, I think would be a better route for them to go in totality than trying to go up against that monster in Denver. So, yes, I think there is some strategy in losing games along the way for those teams that are already in that 1 through 6 seeding. Could do some load management type things along the way through the playoffs and allow for fresher bodies to win these series, especially if you see a team get down in the first half by more than 25 points. I know 25 points goes away like that in the NBA right now, but at 25 points in the first half, do you start taking some of your guys out and do some of that load management stuff and go ahead and lose that game because you know you have another game coming here in 2 more nights?
You would never admit to it, honestly, because that's something that you really can't do by saying, "Yeah, we we lost this game on purpose." But yes, everyone was licking their chops when they saw that the Thunder were the number one seed, at least the play-in tournament teams, because they all thought that they matched up better against the Thunder. Thunder are not a bad team. Let's just say that. I want to be clear about that. They are not a bad team, but they are not the Nuggets. So that's why these teams would rather play the Thunder, because no one wants to match up against Jokic. Let's just be serious.
Well, they're not the Nuggets. And we've made this comparison before, but let's also not forget that there was a time when, the Thunder had a young Katie Harden and Westbrook, and they had that sort of youthful energy about them, and they just kind of, ran through everybody. And we could see the same thing, with guys like Shea Gilgis Alexander, Jalen Williams,
Chet Holmgren.
Yes, Chet Holmgren. I knew I
Yeah,
was forgetting somebody.
yeah, not no relation to Mike, but
but
but yeah,
also, like, I think overall, I think that's completely right. I mean, I think there's really only one true reason to tank, to lose games on purpose, and that's to avoid bad matchups. I mean, why else would you do it? I
yeah,
mean, you're a playoff team or a play-in team. Why else would you intentionally lose other than to avoid bad matchups?
no, yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
really only the 7-8 seed that get that option.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The 9-10, they can't. Their destiny's kinda already controlled in which direction they will be going. So,
And the idea of load management, it works. Uh, through the season, it works. As much as I hate it and as much as I complain about it, as much as I would rather see your stars play every game because you paid them to play every game, load management works in the long run because you are dealing with 5 rounds of playoffs
mhm,
after an 82 game season.
I mean, wasn't that how the Raptors won the championship when they load managed Kawhi Leonard a
Kawhi
few years
Leonard.
years ago? Yeah.
Yep.
Essentially, yes. I mean, and if there's one person right now, and I know this seems obvious, where the load management this season is going to pay off the most going into this postseason, it's none other than LeBron James. LeBron James will most likely play almost every minute probably this postseason because, well, he can now.
I would say it's Joel Embiid. Having, getting fresher legs coming in toward the end of the season and getting some confidence in this late season run that they've been on, even though late season runs are a little iffy, just because you never know the motivation of the teams that are there at the end of the season. So I think the load management for Joel Embiid is going to help the 76ers uh, just as much as what you're saying with LeBron James, but I think Embiid is maybe a tick
Well,
ahead of that in my mind.
well, I thought Embiid was actually quite literally
Yeah,
hurt.
he was
Like,
hurt,
He
so,
was.
but they probably could have milked it a little bit knowing that they play
okay,
in a weak Eastern
yeah.
Conference that they could still make the playoffs, which they
Mhm.
have, but whereas LeBron's the more load management, I'd say, because that's more of, "We're gonna rest him,
Mhm.
this, and that," whereas, Joel Embiid was hurt, probably could have came back sooner, but
Yeah.
they
Well,
held him
and with
back.
LeBron, it makes more sense because LeBron's 39 years old. Okay, he's turning 40 in December.
He's bionic, but not to catch you guys off guard, but really quick, give me your guys' sleeper team in each conference.
Okay.
Or how about this? David, you take the Western Conference, Ed, you take the Eastern Conference. Just a good sleeper team that may surprise some people.
All right. I'm gonna do a little bit because I'm gonna look at the standings.
Yeah.
So for the Eastern
You know what?
Conference, I I know, kind of like we talk about with the President's Trophy in the NHL. I think the same thing goes for the Celtics, being 13 games ahead of everybody else going into these playoffs. They're not a sleeper team, but they're a team that you wonder, it's out there. Did they do too much in the regular season? Did they overextend themselves in the regular season, which is going to make them more susceptible to uh, having to flip the switch back on, so to speak?
Okay. Yeah. I mean that could make sense that they peaked too soon, and that could affect them come playoffs, especially if they are going to be playing some. They could potentially play some big guys such as the 76ers or even the Heat, who bring a lot of momentum coming into that first round matchup. So I see exactly what you mean there, David. Have you had a chance to look it over?
Well, it kind of depends. I mean, I was going to say the Dallas Mavericks, but according to this, Luka Doncic is GTD. So I don't know. I don't know what's up with that. If he is available to play, then I think the Mavericks absolutely are the sleeper pick. to win the West, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty sure Luca will definitely be playing, but yeah, they could be a sleeper team. I just feel like they just haven't been able to fully show their potential with having both Kyrie and Luca there.
Yeah,
I think they've had enough time to do so,
yeah.
and if they can really figure that out, that could be a really dangerous backcourt there,
I mean,
so
and Luca has all, and I don't remember if Kyrie was with the Mavs during this particular time, but Luca has taken the Mavs, into the playoffs deep before. Remember when the Suns had the best record, and then Game 7, the Mavericks just completely obliterated Phoenix, and then they went to the Western Conference Finals where they lost to, was it the Warriors? I don't remember, but I do know that Luca has taken the Mavericks deep into the playoffs before, and if he's available to play, and I think he probably will be, but if he is, then don't be surprised if the Mavericks make it far to at least the Eastern Conference Finals or Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals, or at least Game 7 of the Western Conference semifinals.
yeah. I
And if
mean,
you're looking for a team that's a little further down the bracket on the eastern side than what I was saying with the Celtics, you look at the Pacers because if they get through the Bucks, especially if Giannis, can't go, then there's a good possibility that they wind up against the Knicks, which is a one man band. So then that would then put them against the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. So that is through circumstance that could be a team to look to make a deeper run in the lower half of that bracket.
yeah.
The Pacers better hope they don't run out of scoring juice, man, because God knows that defense is not going to help them.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and we no one wants the Knicks to win because if they do, we know we're gonna have to watch a Spike Lee documentary of the greatest team ever to play, minus
Yeah.
Patrick Ewing. So, but yes, guys, I talked about it earlier. This last weekend was the Masters. It is one of the most tuned in events there is, especially when it comes to golf. And we have a new guy that's really showing up in the PGA, who is making a name for himself, who almost every week is probably going to be a favorite. The last person before him that we saw do this was none other than Shooter McGavin. Boom, boom, baby. And that
Shoot
is and that is none other than Scotty Too Hottie, is what I like to call him. Scottie Scheffler, who took home his second Masters victory, all while his wife was back home. She is almost due to have their baby, their first baby, and he had probably a lot on his mind, and he won this Masters. It was really incredible to watch because yes, I know he was the favorite, but there's just something about how he golfs. He's got that swag that to him that he is not only an amazing golfer, it's just how he carries himself. Sometimes it's just so effortlessly. And yes, I know I said Shooter McGavin sarcastically, but this kind of reminds you of Tiger back in the day. It just seems so effortlessly with him back then. Now we're seeing this with Scottie Scheffler, and to be a favorite almost every tournament you go into. The last person we saw that with was with Tiger Woods. So, guys, I mean, do you guys feel the same when it comes to Scottie Scheffler?
Let me tell you something. In every sport, there is always that one player who is the clear cut best at the game. He may not win MVP every year, but there's no doubt in people's minds that he is the guy. Okay, examples include Michael Jordan of the Bulls. Okay, Michael Jordan didn't win MVP every year, but everybody knew that in basketball, Michael Jordan was the guy. Today, look at the NFL. Patrick Mahomes isn't going to win MVP every year, but you ask all the GMs in the league in an anonymous survey, who is the one quarterback you want to build your roster around? They're all going to say Patrick Mahomes, right? Even Michael Phelps, greatest swimmer of all time, hands down the best Olympian of all time. Even Michael Phelps didn't win gold medals all the time, but everybody knew that he was the guy, both for swimming and the Olympics. Well, it's the same thing with Scottie Scheffler when it comes to golf guys, right? Is Scottie Scheffler going to win the Masters every year? No. Is he going to be the number one ranked golfer every year? No. But there is no doubt, there is no denying that when it comes to golf, Scottie Scheffler is the guy.
I would agree with that. Scottie Scheffler is the guy right now.
Yes.
But much like when Michael Jordan retired, there was always who's going to be the next Michael Jordan. You know, we had Vince Carter, we had uh, AI, we had LeBron, we had all these different players down the line, one after another, say, "Oh, well, is this going to be the next Jordan?" Well, is Scotty going to be the next Tiger? We're never going to see another Tiger. That let's just put that to bed right now, because Scotty would have to be number one in the world for the next 10 years straight before he got in Tiger's realm. And to say that Scotty is the first golfer to be that dominant and that intimidating just walking onto the course since Tiger, I don't know if we can say that totally, because I would almost put that with Rory McIlroy. Keep in mind, Rory has 4 majors. Scotty only has 2 to this point. And the 4 that Rory won were all within the same age range as what Scotty is now. So there's a lot to be said for how good Rory's been on the PGA Tour up to this point, which there were rumors about him going to live, and those have been squashed. So we'll put that to bed. But as far as Rory McIlroy, he was the probably the first guy since Tiger to have that kind of air of dominance about him, even though it was somewhat short lived. We've got to see a lot more out of Scotty to say that he is in that plane. Now, when Scotty steps on a course right now, does every golfer look at him and go, "Oh boy"? Yes, that's exactly what it does, what they do. And it's really been since Scotty picked up that mallet putter versus a blade putter and really changed how he does the greens over the past, I would say, 3 months. It's been in the last 3 months that he has become this much better than everybody else around the greens. He's always been a great driver. He's always been a great on approach. It's the putting portion. He gets that right, he would be more like Tiger. But Tiger was blowing people away like by 15 shots at Pebble Beach. Nobody does that. Uh, Tiger won 5 green jackets. Currently, Scotty has 2. We have a long way to go before we start talking about the air of invincibility or inevitability. So I get what you're saying, David, as far as him being there. I'm just saying he's not the first person to be there to this point.
That's fair. And it should also be worth noting that Tiger won his first Masters championship when he was 21. Like, people knew how dominant he was going to be. Now, Scotty won his first Masters when he was 25, I think, and that is, a tremendous age to win it. But to win it at 21 years old, I mean, people knew that Tiger's time was there and it was going to be there for a long time.
Well, Tiger was this prodigy that everyone had already knew about, similar to LeBron when he came straight out of high school. He's this prodigy. He started out young. I mean, dude, Tiger was what, 2, 3 years old when he first started golfing. It was that crazy. Where Scottie Scheffler, you can't compare the accolades because they aren't there yet. But what you can compare is let's just say, looking at Vegas odds. When he goes into a tournament, there's a reason he's the favorite. Similar to where every tournament Tiger Woods was going into during his prime, he was the odds-on favorite. Not saying he has the fear that Tiger brought to those tournaments, but he does have the awareness. So others are aware when Scottie Scheffler is there, he could still win this.
And there is something too. There's something to be said about the way that Scotty had all the pressure in the world. I mean, he came into the Masters as the literally as the number one ranked golfer in the world, and just this calmness he had about him. I mean, we're going to go into this in just a few minutes, so spoiling it a little bit. But there were various points during the tournament where it looked like, okay, maybe Scotty won't win this, and then in the end, he reminds us, oh yeah, that's why he's the number one golfer in the world.
Well, absolutely.
One of the
Yeah,
things
Ed.
about Scotty, I'm sorry. One of the things about Scotty that I do like to point out is he goes into these tournaments and golf is not his main priority. With so many of these athletes, especially in individual sports, the main priority is the sport. It's not everything else in their lives. So Scotty goes into the Masters proclaiming in front of every press room that he can get in front of that if his wife calls about the child, about the baby being born, he's gone. It doesn't matter where he's at. And about his faith. Those are two things that are more important to him than golf. And that is terrifying for every other golfer on the tour.
Yeah, and not
Right, 'cause it's like, imagine how good he's going to be if golf does become his number one priority.
it never will, but, not to say that, none of the other golfers, aren't family men and they do have other priorities, but, yeah, Scottie Scheffler did make it clear golf is his 4th priority. His first is his faith with, God and Jesus Christ. His second and 3, I could have the wrong order, but I'm pretty sure his second was his, baby coming along the way, his 3rd, his wife, and 4th, golf. So that's number 4 on his list, and he's still in here balling out every tournament like you would have thought it was his number 1 priority. But let's get more in depth specifically on the Masters tournament. Uh, there were times that, yeah, it looked like Scottie Scheffler may not have been on his A game. Then there were times where it's like, oh, no, 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 he's doing just fine. But who would have thought that that the first day of the tournament, which was the worst of the weather, was the best that he did and the best that most of the field did was on the worst day weather-wise, because when you saw that, I mean, he started out 6 under day 1, Bryson DeChambeau 7 under day 1, and that was, really bad winds. You were thinking, "Well, if the weather gets nicer, man, this could get scary, how high this could go." Well, no, they all dropped off as the days went on, and it did change, but the last day of the tournament, there were times where some golfers had chances to come within, reach of him, such as Colin Morikawa. I mean, there was countless times for him, and he came up short. But then there were times where Scotty, then, well, I'm going to eagle this, and he eagled it, and you're like, all right, okay. So the question is asked: did Scotty really win, or did the field just decide to lose? And two things could be right at once. I'd
I
say
think
both.
I think it's more so that Scotty won, especially since at one point there was a four-way, maybe a five-way tie for first place, and then Scotty just kind of pulled away. But also, Matthew, you mentioned Colin Morikawa. I mean, my gosh, what a rough final day of the tournament he had. I mean, there were multiple opportunities he had to tie for the lead, and he kept choking and choking, and then finally he did tie for the lead, and then he choked even harder, and then there don't even get me started that incident, in the Amen corner when the ball just went right into the water, and but what I do like about Colin Morikawa is kind of how he handled himself in the end. Because if you notice, when he was finally done, he had the sigh of relief, as if he was saying, wasn't a great final day for me. It was really a terrible final day for me, but I'm still going to tie for third at least. So with everything that I've been through and all the screw ups that I had, the fact that I'm at least finishing tied for the top three is you know um, pretty great.
Yeah, and you know, somehow up into Amen Corner, everything was looking very tight knit. But you saw the other three golfers outside of Scotty. I really feel like they had to be super aggressive for some reason to keep up with what they knew was coming. It's like they knew it was going to happen. Now, You're right, Matthew. Two things can be correct at once because as Morikawa had the double at 9 and 11, then you had Oberg have his double, and just one after another. They would get that hole that would take them out of it. I can't even explain the Max Homa hit into the bush. That was it. Just hit on the green, bounced straight into a bush that there is no chance of getting, and he gets a double there. And at the same time, Scotty is 4 under in the last 9 holes of the tournament. How in the world does that all happen at once?
Yeah.
So it was really impressive to see the one side just kind of fall off, and then Scotty just hit his put his foot down on the gas and just race to the end.
Yeah, the best kind of analogy I could think of when it comes to this, and pretty much the four names that were pretty much atop the leaderboard that day. You had Scottie Scheffler, Ludwig Oberg, which we're going to talk about more, Colin Morikawa, Max Homa. It reminds me almost similar to the AFC and NFC championship this last year, where you have Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, you have uh, um, Purdy and Jared Goff. So you have a seasoned vet, you have an up and coming like Lamar Jackson compared to Max Homa. You've got your Jared Goff with Colin Morikawa. Then you got your young guy in Brock Purdy, similar to an Oberg. And then you got your Patrick Mahomes and you have your Scottie Scheffler. When you have those four quarterbacks, you got those four golfers. Who are you picking to win when it comes down to it, when it means the most? And chances are you're going to pick Scottie Scheffler and you're going to pick Patrick Mahomes. And it's almost like that's what you kind of have to do, because when the game stands tall, when your back is against the wall, who is going to show up when it means the most? Well, Patrick Mahomes tends to do that almost every single year when he's counted out, and Scottie Scheffler did just that, especially going 4 under. Towards the end, it all happened at the right time, and the guy who's going to come out on it is the guy who knows how to play when the pressure is, coming in at its most.
I gotta say, other than in the beginning, Ed, I'm kind of surprised you haven't said Hookem, since Scotty Scheffler is a Texas alum. I mean, isn't he?
Yes, and when I didn't want to have to brag, but Texas is the only school that has 3 Masters winners.
Yeah. All right, Ed.
Yeah, and then just one
Well,
final.
we're Masters you now too.
And then, like, one final point I want to make too is that, I mean, yes, this is about Scotty, but just in general, is I think it's always so awesome when a player, like a dominant player, wins the championship. And not only is he dominant, but he's just a genuinely likable guy. I mean, I can't think of anybody who hates Scotty. I mean, the dude just seems so genuine and down to earth, and he just so happens to be so freaking good at his sport. I mean, this isn't like, I remember when Patrick Reed won the Masters and nobody seemed happy because a lot of people don't like Patrick Reed. I'm not going to say nobody likes him. I'm sure he has some people who like him, but I do remember just that whole vibe around Patrick Reed at the time, that a lot of people were not happy about his victory.
Well, Scottie Scheffler keeps winning, there'll definitely be more haters. That just means that you're
True.
succeeding.
Winning definitely does breed
100%.
hating, yes.
Look at Patrick Mahomes. Honestly, when he came in the league and he started doing really good, I don't think I met a single person that disliked him. Now,
Mhm.
I know a lot of people that dislike him.
Hey, I will admit that myself. Okay, I've become a Patrick Mahomes hater. I'm sure he's a nice person, but as a football player, I cannot stand him and how he conducts himself. But
Yeah.
that's that.
I mean, for a time I didn't like Tiger just because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's him again.
Yep. Speaking of Tiger, I mean, he made the cut. He set his record. After day 2, he was 1 over, and he was still in this tournament because we expected day 2 for these leaders to really jump out even more, especially how they started, and they did not. They kind of flatlined. So Tiger did have a chance going into round 3. Well, He kind of blew that chance. He actually blew all of them because he finished dead last at
Mhm.
11 over par. He just could not click come the last half of the tournament, and kind of felt bad for the guy because you could tell he's just hurting.
Mhm.
He's had so many surgeries, and it's taken a toll on his body, and I know that he was just going to do whatever he could to even make this tournament, and I give him props for sticking it out because there were rumblings of him pulling out, but he stuck it through, but ultimately he did finish dead last at 11 over.
Do we think do we think that Tiger maybe should have retired, and correct me if I'm wrong on this year, but do we think he should have retired in 2019 when he last won the Masters? Retire on top.
Now, golfers can continue to play well into their late life. One thing that Tiger has done to kind of cope with the loss of the leg strength that he had because of the surgeries that he's had on his knees is his upper body is jacked
Well, and
at
that's
this
for what I
point.
was going along with. Like, and you are right that golfers play. I mean, Phil Mickelson is a clear example, but I was more referring to the fact that Tiger has dealt with injury issues, especially. I mean, he dealt with major injury issues going up to the last Masters where he won the tournament. So that's kind of more where I was going with.
Sure, sure. And Tiger is so competitive that he's going to have a hard time not doing it. One of those guys that you have to drag him off the court or off the course or off the field, whatever sport analogy you want to give right there. But he is that guy. And quite honestly, I'm curious to see if he's trying to wait it out to see if he and Charlie can his son can play on the tour together, get one of those Griffey moments,
Yeah.
uh, in golf. That would be a huge story. It really would. Uh, with Tiger's injuries, though, he still has his hands, and that's his iron play. He still has that. It's just so difficult playing Augusta this week
Mhm.
because it was virtually 3 days of 20 to 30-mile-an-hour winds going straight through that course in every direction at the same time. It was insane.
And playing 23 holes in one day too, that's gonna put a lot on anyone, let alone someone who is up there, in age who has had, probably 30 plus surgeries. So that's gonna put a toll on you.
He would definitely have pulled out of this tournament if it was anything but the
At
Masters.
Masters, yep. I mean, he pulled out of his own tournament, if that tells you anything. So
You
that
know,
was his last tournament he played before the Masters.
I saw some people complain like, why are we showing Tiger so much when he's not doing great at the Masters? Okay, listen, I think we all know that Tiger has earned the right to have that much coverage. I mean, when anybody has a career in any sport, whatever it is, like when their career has been that dominant and they're still playing, yeah, eyes are going to be on them because they still make money for a lot of people. I mean, that would be like back when Michael Jordan was playing and toward the tail end of his career, when he wasn't playing his best, although with Michael Jordan it always felt like he was playing his best. I mean, that'd be like complaining, "Hey, why are we showing Michael Jordan constantly when he's not doing that great?" Because it's still Michael Jordan at the end of the day. Likewise, it's still Tiger Woods at the end of the day.
Why did we show Michael Jordan when he was playing with the Wizards?
Right?
Exactly. It's like this Summer Olympics, you could have Usain Bolt out there. I'm watching. He could be 50 years old and he's out there. I'm watching because he has made a name for himself within that sport and in the world, honestly, that of course you're going to show him.
And not to mention, people are also curious. There's the sort of natural curiosity to see, okay, can Tiger at his age and the injuries that he's dealt with, okay, does he still have it? Can he still perform at a high level? And I've said this many times before, and I'll say it again as someone who's just recently gotten into golf. I can imagine, Matthew and Ed, that was the vibe back when Tiger last won the Masters championship. Like, yes, he's up there in age. Yes, he's dealt with a lot of injuries, but can he overcome those things? And obviously he did
Yeah,
at that time.
2019, he came out of nowhere, and it's
Mhm.
almost like you couldn't really be surprised by that because at the end of the day, it is still Tiger Woods. So, and he showed the whole world, and when he got that green jacket once again, that I'm still Tiger Woods, y'all. So it was incredible to see that, but also incredible was if there was anyone but Scottie Scheffler that was the biggest winner this weekend, it is easily Ludwig Oberg. This
No
was
question.
his first ever major, and he finished second. I just watching him, he instantly became a fan favorite, honestly. I don't think there was a single person out there that was rooting against him. He was smiling all the time. He just had that smile that was contagious, but was backing it up. He was not cocky. Dude always had food in his mouth. That dude can eat. And even they were even talking about it on the broadcast too, how much this guy is eating. But you burn a lot of calories out there. Let's be real. But he's easily one of the biggest winners of the weekend, and his game shows me that he's here to stay. I mean, do you guys agree with watching how he played?
Well, I think you mentioned it, Matthew, but if you didn't, I mean, this was his first major tournament, and he comes in second place to the best golfer in the world. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment.
And if Scotty had gotten a phone call on the 17th green from his wife and he had to walk out, guess who's the winner of the Masters?
Did you guys see there was a meme? I don't think it was. I don't think it was a picture of Oberg. I think it was a picture of Max Homa, but the same logic can apply here. But it was a picture of one of the golfers on his phone, and the caption said, texting Scottie Scheffler, "Hey, your wife is in labor right now."
Let's also be real. There's no way Scottie Scheffler was going to lose to a Texas Tech alum. Okay, I mean,
Oh yeah,
Absolutely. Hook 'em,
there.
baby.
yeah. Sorry, hun. You're just gonna have to keep. You're gonna have to, close your legs because I got to beat this guy first. It's just how the rules are.
Well, and when it comes to Oberg, he's actually already in the top, I want to say top 10, at least top 15 in money so far this year. So it's for those that have been watching golf so far this year, they've seen him play and he has done well. The fact that this is his first major, though, that's the difference, because there's a clear cut difference between the Florida Swing tournaments and the Masters. Two totally different things altogether on that, but you can definitely see Oberg is a player to be reckoned with because he did end his amateur career as the number one golfer in the world. So coming off of his amateur status at the end of last year and into this year, he's got the goods. He is going to be around. And the fact that this course played as windy as it did, coming from Lubbock, Texas, which is made of wind,
And tumbleweeds. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
It just played directly into what he knows how to do. And it all came together for him. And I was super happy to see two Texas guys, even though one's from Norway,
No way.
in the top two of the Masters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it rounds 1 and 2, it's when the wind was at its, worst, and, uh, the timing of it is usually when people are at work. It didn't have the best viewers, 3.4 million average, but the final round, it got up to 12.44 average, so, uh, everyone's always tuned in to Sunday. Everyone's tuned in to see if, Tiger's wearing his Sunday red and if he's in contention. It's just kind of a pastime. You just kind of have to do it. So yeah.
I do want to ask a question about Tiger, and like I really, really want to know what you guys think. But can you think of any other athlete, at least in recent memory, who, like Tiger, reached the mountaintop, was the most beloved athlete in the world, or at least the most beloved athlete in golf, then fell super hard from grace, just like that, became the most hated athlete, but then became the most loved athlete. He reached the mountaintop again. Literally went from being loved to hated, and now he's loved again. It's really been a roller coaster for Tiger Woods in that regard. Can you think of any other athlete that fits that same criteria, from going from loved to hated to loved again?
Individual or team sport?
Um, I would say individual, but if you think you can come up with a better example for team sport, then go with that.
Okay. Because the first one that comes to mind is John McEnroe. Uh, People liked his attitude, but then it just became grating to a lot of people. And then now that he's a commentator, people like him again. It's 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 that cycle. But I get what you're saying as far as while they're still playing.
Yeah,
McEnroe came to mind in him being liked as an announcer, not while he was still playing, because he was always a jerk on the court.
Well,
Mhm.
can you consider Mike Tyson? I mean, he technically is still boxing if you count his bout against Jake Paul,
Yeah.
but that could be another one. I mean, no one liked Mike Tyson, especially after the Holyfield ear bite. I mean, a lot of people didn't like him before that too, but then all of a sudden he's on Hangover and he's everyone's favorite ear biting boxer again.
I mean, and the
Tiger
thing
owning.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing too, like with Tiger, I mean, like let's not forget that the main reason why a lot of people hated him was because he cheated on his wife, and that was a horrible thing to do. And I'm sure he'll be the first to tell you, like, yeah, I effed up. I never should have done that. So people had good reason to hate Tiger, but now people love him again. And of course, I strongly believe in redemption and second chances. And Tiger, to the best of my knowledge, does seem genuinely remorseful for what he did. And I believe if you are remorseful, people shouldn't hold it against you for the rest of your life. But my point still remains that people did have a legit reason for hating Tiger at the time.
Yeah.
Well, now he's just such a nice guy. He's such a nice guy now.
And
Um,
that is according to a friend we know, Ed, that is why he lost the tournament, right?
yes, because he doesn't play well as a nice guy.
No, it's gotta embrace that villain somehow. But besides the Masters, there was another big event that happened over this weekend, and that was a monumental event of UFC 300. It becomes a big significance reason because it's almost like celebrating a century mark. 100, 200, 300. It becomes a milestone. And of course, with Dana White being in charge, he wanted this to be the biggest, best, brightest event that there can be. And what better place than Las Vegas, where pretty much UFC is? Its UFC headquarters is in Las Vegas. And the card was stacked from top to bottom, which was his every intention. And it was awesome. I watched it from the very beginning, from the early prelims. I'm on the East Coast. That started at 6 p.m. my time. I hate the East Coast when it comes to sport. I want to reiterate that. I hate it. But it started at 6 p.m. my time. I did not, it did not finish till 2 a.m. my time. So it was just forever. But it was awesome because I was glued to it. Being a UFC fan, I'm already glued to it. But the fact that I sat there for what is that, 8 hours? Eight
Yep.
hours just I couldn't stop watching, and yeah, it delivered, guys. And if you're not a UFC fan, I urge you, just check it out because it's just one of those events that
Well, I
you have
would
to
have
watch.
checked it out if it wasn't on ESPN Plus. What the hell?
Yeah, it's a pay-per-view event. I mean, the main card is, and I sometimes hate and can't justify paying the $80 for it, but this time I could. It was definitely worth it. And one of the biggest talks of the event was this last second knockout by Max Holloway over Justin Gaethje, which was actually pretty much the fight that everyone wanted to watch in the event. It was not the main event, but it was the main event. If you know what I'm talking about, if you're a UFC fan, this was the fight that you wanted to watch. The UFC created this belt a couple years ago. It's kind of a gimmick called the BMF, baddest mother effer. And these two guys they pretty much if there's a definition next to them, it is these two guys. I called for this fight over a year ago. I tweeted out to Dana White, make this happen. I'm not saying he listened to me, but it'd be pretty cool if he did, because he did make this fight happen. And I have a video here that I want to show you guys of the knockout. If those things bother you, or you don't watch it for the next minute, but this actually was a video of a friend of my brother's actually sent over because he was at the event, and it pretty much is an amazing view of it. So without further ado, here.
Go, go!
That was uh gosh, he folded him like laundry.
What I find so fascinating about that, and I've watched that multiple times, is that I'm still wondering where the hell was the knockout, because it wasn't like there was a Falcon Punch kind of knockout. It just happened. It just
it,
kind of happened.
well, you
That
didn't
right
get
hook to the temple.
to the temple. Yep, we'll do it a lot. I mean, and actually, Max Holloway, who has never been knocked down in his whole UFC career, which is impressive, he actually got knocked down for the first time this fight, pretty much on that exact shot. It hit him right in the temple, and it just does something to your equilibrium. It drops you. And it did happen to him, but he got right back up then once his blood started flowing. But it Max Holloway is a stud. If you did not see, look a little bit closer if you're able to watch this video again. But he called him out to the center of the mat. He did this one other time in the last 10 seconds against Ricardo Lamas, where pointed to the center of the mat. He said, "Let's do it here, last 10 seconds." And they just threw haymakers. And it's exactly what he did this time, too. And with 1 second left, knocked him out, which ties a record for the last second knockout, actually with Demetrius Johnson, if I remember correctly. So, which is a crazy record to hold. But gosh, what a fight. It really was. He broke Justin Gaethje's nose actually at the end of the first round with a spinning back kick right to the nose, shattered it. Justin Gaethje couldn't even breathe out of his nose the rest of the fight. But Justin Gaethje is a BMF, a bad mother effort, because most people would not have been able to compete the rest of that fight. One, not being able to breathe out of your nose. Two, constantly getting hit in a shattered nose is not fun. I don't speak from experience, but I'm sure it is not fun. So the fact that he continued the rest of the rounds, 4 more rounds with a shattered nose, props to him. What a athlete, what a guy. But Max Holloway just really showed that he is still in his prime. He's still only 32 years old, even though he's has a lot of belts. He has done a lot in the UFC. He is still a top in his prime. Another big fight that happened in this card was Kayla Harrison versus Holly Holm. I talked about this fight specifically because this is Kayla Harrison's debut. She is an Olympic world medalist in judo, and she's done mixed. She switched over to mixed martial arts, was in the professional fighting league, and now just made her UFC debut against Holly Holm, who is a very seasoned vet who has been around for a while. She knocked out Ronda Rousey. That's what she's most famous for. But Kayla Harrison just made Holly Holm look like she was a rookie, that she's never fought before. Holly Holm is up there in age, but she could still kick my ass, I'm sure. But Kayla Harrison, who just looked humongous. Gosh, I don't know how she made this weight. I talked about how women usually don't cut a whole lot. Well, Kayla Harrison surely did, because this fight was at 135, and there's no way that girl weighed less than 165. She was just yoked. Her traps, everything. She was just ginormous and was too big for Holly Holm, and she pretty much just embarrassed her. She just controlled the fight from start to finish, eventually submitted her, and Holly Holm probably it's at that point to where she should retire. She's been doing this for a while. She was an amazing boxer. I mean, amazing. Switched over to UFC, won the belt, knocked out Ronda Rousey, has accomplished a lot. I just think it's probably time for her to hang it up. I mean, would you guys agree when it comes to someone of that age?
I mean, how old is she? 40?
42?
44.
44,
Oh,
okay, yeah.
wow.
And Matthew, uh, I watched that fight. I went back and watched that fight specifically because I knew we were talking about this. Holly Holm had the length advantage on Kayla Harrison. Why did she feel it necessary to try and get inside and get a grapple on an ex-judo champion? I don't understand that part of it. That was, to me, that was a dumb strategy to begin with.
It's almost like sorry, it's a bad analogy, but like in prison, you want to assert your dominance. You want to be that alpha male. And I honestly think Holly Holm wanted to show her that uh, I'll beat you at every game. This is mixed martial arts. This isn't just one thing. And I think Holly Holm was just trying to prove a point. And unfortunately, it backfired on her brutally. This is a gold medalist we're talking about in judo. You set her up, and she just threw it right back in your face. Holly Holm should have, yes, used her length more to her advantage, her boxing background, her kicks. She didn't. She paid for that.
Yeah, and to me, Holly Holm actually escaped that first round because she was pinned for most of it, and then got into the second round, and that's when the submission took place. Uh, it just didn't look good for somebody that has been in the UFC game for so long to look that average against a rookie.
Yeah. Well, Kayla Harrison's just that good, and Holly Holm is unfortunately just getting older. So it was just one of both of those was a recipe for disaster for Holm and a recipe for success for Kayla Harrison. I mean, I still think it was a great matchup because Holly Holm is a great welcome to the UFC type of matchup because she could knock you out. And but in the end of the day, Kayla Harrison really showed just how great she is, and that this is this is going to be her sport. She's going to be next for the championship just like that.
Just out of curiosity, Matthew, for those of us who don't know, why was the event called UFC 300? Because personally, and maybe this was the reason, but I thought it was just simply because it was the 300th UFC event. But that doesn't appear to be the case. So why was it called UFC 300?
So it is UFC 300 because it is the 300th just UFC, not the UFC event. So there is UFC fight nights. There's other stem offs of UFC events, but when it comes to like a pay-per-view main event, this is the 300th card of it. It all started out UFC 1 in Denver, Colorado, and they've had UFC 2, UFC 3 and so forth up until 300, but there have been other stem offs. But from a pay per view standpoint, this has been the UFC 300th event when it comes to that.
Cool, nice
Yeah.
to know.
Matthew, there was another fight that I wanted to ask you about real quick. The featherweight championship fight with Diego Lopes and Sadiq Youssef.
Yeah. So it was obviously the featherweight championship, but it was in the featherweight division. Diego Lopez, he is a rising star. This guy can really fight. He really showed it. I felt bad for Sadiq because Sadiq is also in that same category, but there's just something about Diego Lopez, his hands. They are really strong, especially. I mean, I'm not saying he's small, but in a lower weight class like that, they still carry power. But you're not the same type of power you're seeing with Alex Pereira, who won also by knockout in the main event. But yeah, Diego Lopez is going to be a fun guy to watch moving up in the division.
The knockout that Diego put on Sadiq, it looked very much like the combination that I had seen previously in boxing years before, that uppercut right hook combination that looked very Tyson-esque to me. coming out of
Yeah.
that dude's hands, and Sadiq just crumbled.
Well, he did it twice. That's what's crazy is that he literally did the same combination twice, and it worked twice. So,
Yep.
it was a great matchup, honestly. I know it ended in an early first round knockout, but this really was a great matchup by Dana White because they were two rising stars who did carry a lot of power, who were very quick on their feet, but anything can happen, and that's exactly really what happened was the knockout there. So he's going to be a name to really watch out for. So I urge you to keep watching that. But uh, big news was announced at the end of UFC 300, and that is the return of Conor McGregor, who is the biggest name in UFC history, has made them so much money. He has made himself so much money. He kind of just goes on his own time. He is going to be facing off against Michael Chandler. Both him and Chandler work the coaches of the Ultimate Fighter. It's always been a tradition the coaches fight each other right after. It used to be on the same card as the finale of the Ultimate Fighter. That has changed. But Conor McGregor, he has been kind of in a world of his own. He's now doing movies. He was in the movie Roadhouse. He did hurt himself in his last fight against Dustin Poirier, which has been several years. He broke his leg, but because of that, a lot of people may not know this if they don't follow the sport, but he had to take steroids in his recovery, which of course is a banned substance. So he had to withdraw from the doping agency that drug tests them constantly. And he just got massive. This is a guy who was around probably 200 pounds, if not more, because of him working out. He was only able to do upper body for the most part and being on steroids. Then he entered the pool again, but we've been waiting forever. When's he going to fight? Well, it's officially announced UFC 303. Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler is finally happening. It's going to be a really fun fight to watch. It's Conor McGregor. So, of course, everyone's going to really tune into this event because, well, he and UFC are synonymous. One last thing that I wanted to cover, this is based off of our last show. We talked about the possibility of the Arizona Coyotes relocating to Salt Lake City. Well, we've got ourselves an update. The players have been informed that they are relocating to Salt Lake City. David is probably getting antsy because it could be the Yetis. He's hoping it is. He wants to call this, and it very well may actually be. I mean, it could be fruition.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not going to be a Yeti fan. I mean, I'm a Lightning fan, and if you follow hockey, I mean, really, enough said, right? But listen, man, I feel really bad for Coyotes fans, and I'm sure at some point I probably made some jokes about Coyotes fans not showing up to games and whatnot, even though, like me as a race fan, different sport, but the same concept applies. I realize that makes me a bit of a hypocrite, but I'm sure I've cracked jokes before. But in all seriousness, man, I do feel bad for Coyotes fans, especially because from what I gather, from what I understand, their owner was constantly talking about how, like, oh, I'm gonna do everything I can to keep this team in the Phoenix Tempe area. When really all along behind their backs, he was prepping for this move this whole time. So he really stabbed all the fans in the back. So I can imagine that Coyotes fans can't wait for at least him to get the hell out of there.
Hey, David, ask me if the Coyotes have moved to Salt Lake City.
Okay, have the Coyotes move to Salt Lake City.
Not Yeti.
That's a good one.
Ed was teeing that one up there, but funny enough that he had you ask that question because the Coyotes are staying in Phoenix, not the team, just
But
the
the name,
name.
which
So
tells me that Gary Bettman probably envisions uh, another Arizona Coyotes team in the future. I mean, why else would you keep the rights to the name?
who's gonna give it to him at this point? That's the thing, though. You can keep that name all you want, but
I
no
mean,
one's
as
really
long
gonna.
as they still have that owner, like who would want to do business with him at this point?
Exactly, and I don't know if you guys heard this as well, but I feel like I heard that is there a minor league team or another local hockey team there that's also going to be moving with them to Salt Lake City? I feel like I heard something along
Are
those
they? Is
lines.
that the? Are they called the Roadrunners, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, I want to say that
That's
is
the Tucson minor league team.
yeah, and they'll also be moving up to Salt Lake City as
Mm.
well. So it sounds like almost like a clearing of house. So if you liked hockey in
It,
Phoenix, Arizona area, you're gonna have to.
if you want to know how dire the situation is in Phoenix right now, I don't know if you guys saw, but after the Coyotes, I think they beat the Oilers. The Twitter admin for the official Coyotes Twitter page had a caption that just simply said "final." Period. Now, usually you write a caption like that final period when your team loses because how can you celebrate a loss, right? Well, this, that caption, that tweet was posted literally the day that it was announced they're moving, or at least the day it was leaked that they're moving to Salt Lake City. And keep in mind that same admin actually had a post that said, we won in Edmonton, or some excited post, and then deleted it, and then followed up with a new tweet that just simply said final. Period. As I said, you only tweet something like that when your team loses. That was tweeted after they won, and obviously it's because of the situation that they're facing right now.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation that any fan base, I don't wish that upon you because it's tough, especially if you've really gone to liking a team, even though the Coyotes were bottom feeders for the most part, but it's still a team. They still got fans, and that's just how it is. So I don't wish that upon anyone with their team leaving. But that is about all we have today, folks. If you could hit that like, that subscribe button, we would really appreciate that. Also, drop in the comments your predictions on the NBA playoffs. Who you think's going to win it all? Who is a sleeper pick? Who you're pulling for? And also, if you watched UFC 300 last weekend, let us know what your favorite fight was on the card. There was many great fights, and it's a big card. And if you watched it like I did, I'm sure you want to say all of them, but put which one you thought stood out the most, and also share this video. We do appreciate that. But until next time, guys, we are rounding third and we are headed for home.